When my son told me, "You should find a corner to live the rest of your life," I felt like my heart was being ripped out. I had packed my life into a few boxes, as a mother always tries to do, just as I always do. 3 days later, I sat in a lawyer's office, realizing that the husband I thought loved me for so many years had left me with a secret bigger than I could have imagined. My son Ethan was about to learn that sometimes the most overlooked person ends up holding it all. If you are reading this, please leave a comment and tell me where you are coming from. I want to tell you about my journey from being a homeless, abandoned widow to a woman in control of her own life. Trust me, this story is full of more surprises than a maze built of lies. 2 months ago, I was Eleanor Brooks, a devoted wife of 40 years and mother of a son whose ingratitude I could not believe. When my husband James died of a stroke at the age of 68, I thought my whole world had collapsed. Ethan appeared in the middle of my pain, a predator in an expensive suit, speaking words of false concern. "Mom, you can't live in this house alone," he said, his voice sweet but cold. "It's too big, too full of memories, and you need a break." I should have seen through the lie in his eyes. Ethan had always been James's pride and joy, the perfect son who could do no wrong. When Ethan married Laura, an ambitious real estate agent, and started having children, James poured all his love into them. And me? I was just the woman behind the scenes, cooking, cleaning, and keeping everything in the house perfect. After James's funeral, Ethan became unusually interested in me. He would drop by with Laura, bringing elaborate family dinners, but I soon realized it was all an act. They sat across from me, laying out brochures about nursing homes and senior living. "Mom, these places are perfect," Laura said, her voice saccharine. "You'll have friends your own age, activities, and no housework to worry about." What they really meant, no division of property, no need to worry about an old-fashioned mother like me. The final blow came on a Wednesday afternoon, just 7 weeks after James died. I was still living in my house, sleeping on the sofa in the living room because I couldn't face the master bedroom, which held so many memories of James. Ethan showed up unannounced, dragging Laura and 3 large duffel bags. "Mom, we've made up our minds," Ethan said, his voice flat as if reading from a script. "Laura just signed a big contract, and we need to move downtown. This house is perfect for us." I looked at him, my mind reeling. "Move in? But this is your house." Ethan exchanged glances with Laura, and I saw a flash of a smile, cold and calculating. "Actually, Mom," he said, "according to Dad's will, I'm inheriting everything. The house, the investments, everything. I left you here because I wanted you to have time to adjust. But now you need to find a new place." The words stabbed me like a knife through my heart. "Ethan, there must be some mistake," I stammered. "There isn't a mistake, Mom," he replied, his tone as if explaining to a child. "I knew you would handle the money better. Mom was never good with money. She was just a housewife. Just a housewife." 40 years of sacrifice, of caring for a family, wrapped up in those few words. Then Ethan said something that left me speechless. "You should find somewhere else to live out your remaining years. You're just a burden here." I packed my things in one day, 4 decades of marriage, memories, dreams, all in 2 suitcases and a box of old letters. Ethan stood in the doorway, scrolling through his phone as if I were delaying him from an important appointment. "Mom, there's a great senior living community on Sycamore Street," he said, his tone like he was advertising a budget resort. "They have everything you need, the price is right, and you'll be comfortable there." Fair enough. My son, who had just announced his $28 million inheritance, was suggesting I move into a senior living facility on a shoestring. Laura, standing next to me, quickly loaded my things into their luxury SUV, as if she were taking trash out of the house. "Eleanor, you'll feel so much better," she said, avoiding my gaze. "No more bills or house maintenance." What she meant was, no house to worry about. As the car rolled away, I watched my house, James's now Ethan's, disappear in the rearview mirror. The irony was a stab. I'd spent 40 years building that home, celebrating Ethan's birthdays, nursing James through his illnesses, and worrying about the little details that kept the family together. Now I was being kicked out like a guest who'd overstayed his welcome. They took me to the Pine View Motel, a place as shabby as its $45 a night price tag suggested. The walls were thin, the sheets frayed, and the smell of mold hung in the air. Ethan pressed $150 in cash into my hand, like he was tipping a waiter. "Consider this an advance to get you settled," he said. "I'll wire you some more after Dad's inheritance is processed." A little money, as if I were an expense that needed to be paid quickly so they could move on. After they left, I sat on the old bed, the mattress sinking so deep that I felt like I was sinking. In just a few hours, I had gone from a widow trying to cope with the loss of my husband to an old woman with no place to go. The son I had loved, raised, and sacrificed his life for had thrown me away like an obsolete, worthless item. Sitting in the dimly lit room of the Pine View Motel, an uneasy feeling began to rise within me. Something was wrong. My late husband, James, had always been meticulous, almost obsessive about keeping things in order. Years ago, he had sat with me, opened the safe in his study, and shown me his will. He had explained the terms clearly, making sure I understood his intentions. I remembered every word he said, and I was certain that the will could not have left everything to Ethan as he had claimed. James may be conservative, sometimes a bit bossy when it comes to money, but he's not cruel. The man who held me through the night when my father died, the man who always left a hot cup of coffee on the table every Saturday morning, would never let me be homeless and penniless. The next morning, I used the motel's shaky Wi-Fi to look up information about James's attorney, Walter Grayson, who had helped us buy our house in the Chicago suburbs and handled many of James's business transactions over the past 2 decades. Walter Grayson's office was in downtown Chicago, about a 25-minute bus ride from the Pine View Motel. The trip had cost me most of my remaining funds, but I knew I had to do it. Walter was a calm man in his 70s, with neatly combed gray hair. When his secretary announced that I had come to inquire about James's assets, he looked up from his desk, his eyes alight with surprise. "Eleanor, I've been wondering when you'd come," he said, his voice deep. "I've called your home a few times, but Ethan said you were in Florida on a vacation, grieving." A vacation? I almost choked. Had my son made up such a story? "Mr. Grayson, I need to see James's will," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He frowned, clearly confused. "Of course. Didn't Ethan give you a copy?" I gave him the original and several copies after the reading. My heart stopped. "The reading?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "Eleanor, you were supposed to be there. Ethan had told Walter that I was too broken to attend, and he would make sure I got my share." My face burned as the truth sank in. "Mr. Grayson, I never heard about any will reading," I said. "Ethan told me he inherited everything, the house, the money, everything." Walter's expression went from surprise to horror. He hurriedly opened a drawer and pulled out a thick file. "Eleanor, that can't be right," he said, his voice urgent. He handed me a document, and I recognized James's familiar signature at the bottom of the page, along with the witness's signature and notary's seal. "James's will is very clear about your inheritance," Walter said, beginning to read. "I, James Michael Brooks, of sound mind and sound health, bequeath to my beloved wife, Eleanor Marie Brooks, the family home at 1123 Willow Lane and all its contents and personal effects." I sat there, stunned, realizing Ethan had lied about it all. Walter continued reading, his voice low and heavy. "In addition, I leave Eleanor 65% of my entire financial assets, investments, and bank accounts, estimated at $18 million. My head spun. $18 million. The house. Almost everything. Walter paused, peered at me over his glasses, then continued reading. "To my son, Ethan James Brooks, I leave $10 million in a trust fund, to be distributed only when he turns 40, on the condition that he treat his mother with respect and care after my death." The condition was like a knife to my heart. James knew. Somehow, he had anticipated what Ethan would do. "Mr. Grayson," I whispered, my voice choking, "Ethan told me I had no inheritance. He moved into my house, gave me $150, and told me to find a nursing home to live in." Walter's face was red, his hands clenched around the edge of the table. "Eleanor, What Ethan did was elder abuse and gross fraud. He explained that Ethan might have shown me a fake will or an older version that James had destroyed. James changed the will 8 months ago, Walter said, his voice filled with indignation. He was worried about Ethan's handling of money, his neediness, and irresponsibility. James wanted to protect you. I remembered Ethan interrupting me at family meals, shaking his head when I tried to comment on Laura's business plans or their lavish trips. James had watched silently, recognized his son's selfishness, and acted to protect me. "Anything else, Mr. Grayson?" I asked, feeling the room tilt. Walter cleared his throat and pointed to a passage in the will. Ethan's trust stated that if he did not treat you with respect and care after James died, the entire $10 million would be transferred to you. I looked at him, stunned. "You mean Ethan disinherited himself?" Walter nodded, his eyes serious. "That's right, Eleanor. Not only did he lose the $10 million, but your inheritance now includes it. You don't get $18 million, you get $28 million, plus the house and all your personal assets." The irony almost made me laugh. Ethan, in his greed for all, had inadvertently triggered the very clause James had designed to protect me. "What do I do now, Mr. Grayson?" I asked, my voice cracking with a mixture of anger and hope. Walter smiled softly, and for the first time since James had died, I felt genuine support. "Now, Eleanor, we'll report this fraud to the police. Then we'll call Ethan and let him know his world is about to turn upside down." "Can he fight back?" I asked. "With whose money?" Walter said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Ethan is about to find out that every account he thought he controlled belongs to you. His investments, his bank accounts, everything except the house has been frozen as part of an investigation into his fraud." I pictured Ethan and Laura in my house, perhaps discussing repainting the walls or buying more expensive furniture with money they thought was theirs. They had no idea that in a matter of hours, their entire lives would fall apart. Walter Grayson's office became command center for what he jokingly called Operation Upside Down. He quickly contacted the police, the bank, and a private investigator, while I sat in the leather chair in his office, trying to digest the extent of Ethan's betrayal. "These forgeries are very elaborate," Detective Karen Mitchell said, flipping through the fake will Ethan had given me. "This wasn't a sloppy job. Someone planned it very carefully." "It is no my dears of a minute," I cried. "Have to get a water, get another tuvel." "You mean Ethan had accomplices?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Almost certainly," Mitchell said. "Creating a fake document that looks legitimate like this requires expertise and connections in the financial or legal world." She tilted her head, looking at me. "We'll investigate whether Laura or anyone in her network was involved." Within 3 hours, Ethan's accounts were frozen. The credit cards he used, linked to money he thought was an inheritance, were declined. The utility bills on the house, which Ethan had hastily transferred to his name, were suspended to verify ownership. My phone buzzed at 4:12 p.m. Ethan's name popped up on the screen. "Mom, where are you?" His voice was strained. "The bank says Dad's assets are frozen. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "Hi, Ethan. I'm at Mr. Grayson's office. Remember him? Dad's lawyer, the one who read the real will when you told him Mom was in Florida on vacation. Asked, is the glaf? And they game madabatter? And saps?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, I don't know what you think you found, but you're making things up and causing trouble," Ethan said, his voice tinged with anger. "Honey," I replied, my voice sharp, "you're the one who figured out that your dad is a lot smarter than you thought. You were trying to protect me from that money, right? You thought I wasn't good enough to manage my finances, so you forged papers, cheated me, and kicked me out of the house at 65 because you thought I was too stupid to know." Ethan's voice became high-pitched, almost panicked. "Mom, you're confused. You're so distraught, and it's obvious someone is using you against me." Ethan's brazenness astounded me. Even though he had been exposed, he still managed to manipulate me. "Ethan, let me be clear," I replied, my voice as hard as steel. "Not only do you not inherit anything, but the $10 million your father left in the trust now belongs to me. Thanks to a clever clause your father added requiring you to treat me with respect and kindness. You have failed miserably. That's impossible, Ethan almost shouted, his voice cracking. I could tell he was frantically searching for an excuse. Detective Mitchell is here, I said, my voice calm but sharp. If you want to contest the fraud charge, she's here to listen. There was silence on the other end of the line, as if Ethan were trying to find a way to turn the tables. Mom, please, he said in a low, almost pleading voice. Can we meet and talk? I think we can work this out. Oh, we'll see each other soon, I said. In court, when I'm charged. Ethan let out a strained laugh. Mom, you wouldn't do that to your son, would you? A cold feeling spread through my chest, as if all the remaining emotion had turned to ice. Just wait, Ethan. I hung up and looked at Walter. He nodded, his eyes shining with approval. When are they going to arrest him? I asked, my voice shaking with adrenaline. Detective Mitchell has enough evidence to get a warrant, Walter said. They're going to arrest Ethan tonight, and Laura, her financial records are being checked. If she's involved in forgery, she'll be prosecuted too. I smiled faintly, imagining Ethan and Laura in my house, probably thinking everything was under control. They had no idea that their world was about to collapse. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Mom, please don't do this. What do you think of the kids? I handed the phone to Detective Mitchell, and she curled her lips into a cold smile. Emotional manipulation, she said. A familiar trick of these guys. I texted back, my fingers tapping rapidly. I'm thinking of them. Do you deserve to see your father destroy his family for greed? Less than 15 minutes later, Laura called. Eleanor, we can work this out, she said, her voice sweet but strained. Ethan made a mistake, but isn't it too much to bring the police into this? I interrupted, my voice sharp. Laura, did you have any part in forging the documents? She paused for a second, then said quickly, Eleanor, you have to understand. Ethan just wants to protect you. He's worried about your ability to manage your assets, especially after Uncle James passed away. That's right, I said, my voice calm but full of sarcasm. You and Ethan think that kicking me out of the house and telling me to find a place to live the rest of my life is the way to protect me? Laura didn't respond, only a sigh on the other end of the line. Laura, this is going to happen, I continued. You're both going to be arrested. You're both going to face serious fraud charges, and I'm going to sit in my house, and watch it all. Eleanor, please, be rational, Laura almost begged. I've been rational for 40 years, I said. And where has that gotten me? To a rundown motel with $150 in my hand. Now it's your turn to pay. I hung up, feeling a new surge of strength run through me. The police arrested Ethan at 9:15 p.m. in the middle of dinner at a fancy restaurant called Vespera, where he was apparently celebrating his inheritance win with Laura and a group of friends. According to Detective Mitchell, Ethan protested loudly, shouting that this was a huge misunderstanding and demanding to see a lawyer. As it turned out, his lawyer was just an acquaintance from the country club, with absolutely no experience in criminal law. Laura was arrested the next morning at her real estate office. Forensic accountants traced the forged documents to a printing company that Laura's company had used to create fraudulent promotional materials. Apparently, my daughter-in-law had a history of fraud that Ethan either didn't know about or chose to ignore. That night, I returned to my own home for the first time in days, lying on the bed in the master bedroom. Ethan had moved his things in, replacing James's neatness with Laura's expensive suits and high-end makeup. I packed them all into large trash bags and left them in the front yard. If they wanted them back, they could wait until they paid bail. The house felt different now, not because James was gone, but because, for the first time, I felt like it belonged to me. Over the past 4 decades, I had transformed this house into a place that reflected James's tastes and desires, from the decor to the details of everyday life. But now, as I looked around with a new perspective, I realized that I was almost invisible in this very space. That was all about to change. Around noon, Walter Grayson called to give me an update. Ethan's bail is set at $75,000, he said. But since all his accounts are frozen, he'll have to get help. What about Laura? I asked. $250,000. The judge didn't seem to take kindly to her history of real estate fraud. I shook my head. Who would have thought their daughter-in-law would be involved in such shady business? Certainly not me, who was always left out of every discussion of family finances. Ethan and Laura often talked to me like I was a child, simplifying everything about money because they thought I couldn't understand. They were about to see how much I understood. "Walter, I want to do some renovations," I said. "Ethan has hired a contractor to do some changes. I want to continue, but on my own terms." Walter smiled over the phone. "Great idea, Eleanor. It's your house. Do whatever makes you happy." What would make me happy, I realized, was to erase every trace of the assumptions Ethan had made about my inheritance. He planned to tear out the kitchen, refloor it with marble, and turn James's study into a gym. I was different. I wanted the study to be a quiet reading nook and the kitchen to be a cozy space of my own. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Miss Brooks, this is Lisa Bennett from Channel 5 News," a woman's voice said. "We heard you were the victim of a serious scam involving your son. Would you be willing to share your story?" The news traveled faster than I thought it would. I took a deep breath, feeling a new strength rising within me. In a major city like Chicago, the arrest of a real estate broker and her husband for defrauding their own mother has made headlines. "Miss Brooks, I appreciate your concern," I said to Lisa Bennett on the phone, "but I'm not ready to go public yet." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I understand, but your story may help other seniors recognize the signs of financial abuse in their own families." She was right. I thought about how many older women like me, manipulated by their own adult children, saw them as obstacles to their inheritance. "If I agree to tell this story," I asked, "can I control how it is presented?" "Sure," Lisa replied. "We can arrange a face-to-face interview, and you can have final approval of the edit." I thought of Ethan, probably in prison, still convinced he could cover it all up with clever excuses. "Miss Bennett," I said, my voice firm, "give me a moment to think. I have a long story to tell, and I want it told properly." After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of fine whiskey, James's last birthday present, now in my own liquor cabinet. Sitting in my house, sipping whiskey, I considered going public, letting the world see how Ethan and Laura had betrayed me. Life, as I had expected, had taken an unexpected turn. The doorbell rang at 6:45 a.m. I looked out the window and saw Ethan standing on the porch, still wearing the same suit from yesterday, looking 10 years older overnight. Somehow, he had been released on bail. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "Mom, please," Ethan said, his voice hoarse. "We need to talk." "We talked, Ethan," I said, my voice cold. "You told me to find a place to live the rest of my life, but I chose to live, and live well." Ethan's eyes were red, his usual confidence gone. "I was wrong," he said. "I made a big mistake, but I'm still your son." "Son?" I asked, my voice bitter. "Son doesn't forge papers to steal his mother's inheritance." Ethan bowed his head, no longer trying to hide it. "I didn't steal," he muttered. "I just wanted to protect my mother." "Protect?" I interrupted. "Protect by kicking me out of the house and treating me like a burden?" "Ethan, what are you trying to justify?" He was silent, but I saw the desperation in his eyes. "Even now, you still refuse to admit it," I continued. "In your head, you still think you're the victim, that I'm too stupid to understand what you did." "Ethan," I said slowly, "let me tell you what your father said 8 months before he died. He was worried about your selfishness, the way you treated money as if it defined you, and the way you looked down on people who couldn't keep up with your lifestyle." Ethan's face paled. "He never said that," he whispered. "Oh yes," I said. "He said you reminded him of your uncle, Daniel, talented, charming, but only interested in himself. He changed the will because he was afraid you would hurt Mom if you got the chance." "That's a lie," Ethan said, but his voice was shaky, uncertain. I pulled out my phone and opened a file. "This isn't just talk, Ethan," I said. "Your dad recorded a video explaining his decision, and it will be played if you contest the will or treat your mother badly after he's gone." Ethan stared at the phone, pale as if I were holding a bomb. "He knows who you are, deep down," I said. "He just didn't expect you to go this far." "Play it," Ethan whispered, his voice shaking. I pressed the button, and James's voice rang out in the morning air, calm but sharp as a knife. "If you're listening to this, Ethan, then my fears about you have come true. I hope I'm wrong. I hope my son is more honest and kind than I thought. But if your mother is showing you this video, then you've proven me right in the worst possible way." Ethan collapsed on the steps, holding his head as James continued. "Your mother has devoted her entire life, 40 years, to providing for this family. She worked overtime to pay for your college tuition, gave up her dream of becoming a writer, and put everything else aside to be the wife and mother you and your dad expected her to be. She deserves respect, not lies." The video went on for several more minutes, each word a hammer blow to Ethan's defenses. "When you hear this, you'll see that treating your mother badly cost you everything. I hope it was worth it." When the video ended, Ethan cried, not the dramatic tears he used to manipulate people, but deep, painful sobs. "Dad hates me," he whispered. "No," I replied, my voice calm. "Dad loves you enough to hope you'll prove him wrong. But you chose exactly as he predicted." Ethan looked up, tears streaking his face. "What now, Mom?" he asked. "Now I have to face the consequences," I said. "The fraud charges, the investigation, and the public humiliation when this story airs. Channel 5 News wants to interview you about elder financial abuse. You're considering saying yes?" Ethan cringed. "Mom, please, think about the kids, about Laura's career, about our family." "I was thinking," I said. "I was thinking about how you didn't think twice when you decided to lie to me." Ethan stood up, slowly, looking defeated. "I know you don't believe me, but I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said. "I just wanted the money. I want stability, security," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I don't want to worry about the future anymore." For the first time since it all began, I heard the truth in his words. "I believe you, Ethan," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "But wanting something doesn't justify destroying others to get it." Ethan bowed his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. "What can I do to make this right?" he asked, his voice weak. "I can start by admitting what I did was wrong," I said. "No excuses, no blame, no beating around the bush. Just say I was wrong, unforgivably wrong. Then I can face the consequences with dignity, instead of trying to avoid them." Ethan looked at me, his gaze lingering longer than usual. For the first time, perhaps, he saw not his easygoing, indulgent mother, but a woman who had completely surpassed him. "You deserved it, didn't you?" he whispered. "Yes, Ethan," I said, without hesitation. "You deserved it." 3 days after the confrontation with Ethan on the porch, Laura's mother appeared at my door. Patricia Langston was the very personification of royalty, with perfectly coiffed hair, sparkling jewelry, and the air of someone who had inherited a multi-generational fortune. "Eleanor, we need to talk rationally," she said, her tone benevolent. I invited her in, curious to hear what story the Langstons had concocted to justify their daughter's crimes. Patricia sat down on the sofa in the living room, posing as if she were the hostess. "Laura clearly made some bad choices," she began, "but prosecuting her seems a little excessive, don't you think?" "Excessive?" I repeated, my voice cold. "Your daughter helped Ethan forge documents to steal my inheritance and kick me out of our home." Patricia raised an eyebrow, as if I had misunderstood something minor. Laura was just following Ethan. She didn't have the full picture. And a zapped of that within. I almost laughed at the brazenness. "Mrs. Langston, Laura was involved in forging legal documents," I said. "That wasn't following instructions. That was a scheme to defraud." Patricia smiled, the confidence of someone used to settling problems with money. "Laura's attorney believes we can reach a settlement that will benefit everyone. You get the house back, Ethan takes the blame, and Laura avoids a public trial." "Main responsibility?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "As if Laura's crime was just a minor mistake?" Patricia tilted her head, still smiling. "Our family is willing to pay for this inconvenience. Let's say $3 million in exchange for dropping the charges against Laura. $3 million to clear the name of the person who helped steal $28 million from me." "Mrs. Langston," I replied, "your daughter was part of a scheme that cost me everything. Do you think $3 million is enough?" Patricia sighed, her perfect facade faltering. Eleanor, be realistic. Laura has a career, children, and a reputation to protect. Putting her in jail doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help, I said. It brings justice. Patricia frowned, her eyes sharp. Justice? You're destroying a family for money you don't know how to manage. We know that due in every double defader and every double to water. Snaction. Patricia's disdainful attitude reminded me of the times Ethan and Laura had treated me as if I were a useless housewife, not worthy of serious discussion. Mrs. Langston, I said, my voice stiff, I think we're done. Patricia tilted her head, still trying to maintain her composure. Eleanor, please reconsider. Last offer. $5 million for Laura's freedom. $5 million a lot of money, but principles are not for sale. My answer is no, I said, rising to see the guests off. Patricia smiled faintly, but her eyes were sharp. Fine, Eleanor. But you should know that Laura's legal team has uncovered some interesting information about James's business. It would be a shame if it became public during the trial. The threat was clear, but instead of fear, I felt curious. What information? I asked, my voice calm. The kind of information that would make you reconsider who's to blame for this, Patricia replied, her voice thick with meaning. After she left, I immediately called Walter Grayson. Walter, the Langstons are threatening to dig up information about James's work. Whatever it is, I need to know. Eleanor, whatever they think they find, it doesn't change Ethan and Laura's guilt, Walter said. But there was a note of concern in his voice. However, if they mess things up, cast doubt on James's business or character, it could sway the jury. I thought about James, about our 40 years of marriage, about the things he might have hidden from me. Walter, I want to know everything, I said. Every transaction, every relationship, every unusual detail of James's business. Are you sure, Eleanor? Walter asked. Sometimes the past should be left alone. The Langstons want to tarnish James's memory to protect their daughter, I replied. I need to know the truth before they use it against me. That night, I sat in James's office, now my own space, and began to review his files. James had always been a neat man, with every file neatly filed and dated. But as I dug deeper into his business dealings, I noticed something unusual. Payments to unidentified companies, unusually high fees for consulting services, and partnerships with organizations that seemed to exist only on paper. By late at night, I had made a shocking discovery that shook everything I had ever believed about my husband. I contacted the private investigator Walter had recommended, a sharp-tongued woman named Diane Foster, who specialized in financial crimes. She came to my house and spent 8 hours in James's office, photographing documents and analyzing every detail. When she sat down across from me, her eyes serious, I knew what I was about to hear would change everything. Mrs. Brooks, Diane said, your husband ran a complex money laundering scheme through his investment firm. We're talking about millions of dollars in illegal transactions over a decade. I felt the ground fall away from me. No way, I said, my voice shaking. James is a man of integrity. He couldn't have done that. Diane pushed a stack of documents toward me. I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. He used his legitimate company as a front to launder money for some criminal organization. And we longed. I stared at the pile of paperwork on my desk, invoices for non-existent services, contracts with shell companies, and payments that matched the dates of documented criminal activity. How long has this been going on? I asked, my voice almost choking. According to the records, Diane said, at least 14 years, maybe more. 14 years. For a third of our marriage, James had lived a secret life that I had no knowledge of. While I was busy throwing birthday parties and attending charity events, my husband James was involved in criminal activities. There's more to it than that, Mrs. Brooks, Diane Foster said, her voice low. The $10 million trust fund that James left Ethan, that money was laundered. If the FBI found out, they could seize everything as proceeds of crime. My head was spinning. Everything, the house, the investments, everything could be gone. Unless, I muttered, my voice choking. Unless what? Diane looked at me, her eyes unreadable. Unless Ethan and Laura's legal team already knows about this and is using it as leverage. If they alert the FBI to James's activities, they might be able to negotiate immunity in exchange for cooperation. I felt like I had been stabbed again. Ethan and Laura weren't just con artists, they were holding a nuclear bomb, ready to destroy everything to save themselves. What are my options? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Diane sighed. Legally, you can contact the FBI, volunteer information, and hope for leniency. You'll lose most of your assets, but you'll likely keep your house. But if you do nothing, Ethan and Laura's lawyers can expose this information in the most unfavorable way possible. Not only will you lose everything, but you could also face charges for unwittingly benefiting from criminal activity. I thought of Patricia Langston's smug smile, her confidence that I would cave to their offer. They had known about James's secret for a long time. Diane, I asked, my voice strained. How did they know? Diane shrugged. Laura works in real estate, dealing with complex financial transactions. She or Ethan may have noticed something unusual in James's file. The question is how they plan to use the information. My phone buzzed. It was Ethan. Mom, we need to meet tonight, he said, his voice urgent. There are things you need to know about Dad that will change everything. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. I know, Ethan. I know about the money laundering, about the criminal connections. I know everything your dad left behind is tainted. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. You really know? Ethan finally said, his voice shaking. Yes, I said. And you know Laura's lawyer has contacted the FBI, right? Ethan cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. They're willing to make a deal. If Laura and I give you information about Dad's criminal network, Laura gets a clean bill of health. We get to keep the $4 million and the house. The government gets the rest. And what about you? I asked, my voice cold. The fraud charges against me, and Laura will be dismissed. We'll all be out of this mess. His brazenness stunned me. Ethan was turning my moral superiority into a strategic advantage for him. Ethan, I said, my voice sharp. You're asking me to help you profit from your crime by exploiting your fathers. Mom, be realistic, Ethan replied. If you don't agree, you'll lose everything, and you could face charges for benefiting from criminal activity. I looked around James's office, really seeing it for the first time. The expensive leather chairs, the antique bookshelves, and the collection of rare clocks, all bought with money from shady deals. I need time, I told Ethan on the phone, my voice calm but firm. Mom, Laura's lawyer needs answers by tonight, Ethan replied, his voice strained. There's a meeting with the FBI tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of the room, surrounded by the remnants of the secret life James had kept from me for 40 years. I had married a stranger, and my son, Ethan, seemed to have inherited not only his father's fortune, but also his lies. But he had made a huge mistake. He had underestimated me when I was backed into a corner. I picked up the phone and called Diane Foster. Diane, how quickly can you get a meeting with the FBI? I asked, my voice firm. I have a story to tell, and I think they'll want to hear it. FBI agent Rachel Carter looked like something out of an action movie, stern, sharp, and unmoved by any sentimental story. She sat across from me in Walter Grayson's conference room, recording the conversation and taking notes with mechanical precision. Miss Brooks, she said, her voice calm but sharp, you understand that coming forward could make you appear to have benefited from ill-gotten gains, right? I understand, I said, looking her straight in the eye. But I'd rather tell you the truth than let my son and daughter-in-law use James's secret to get away with it. I told her everything: James's shady business dealings, Ethan's fraud, Laura's forged documents, and their blackmail scheme disguised as a deal. Ethan thought he could use information about his father's crimes to get immunity, I said. He believed I would cooperate because he feared losing everything. Rachel raised her eyebrows, revealing a faint smile for the first time. Miss Brooks, are you scared? I took a deep breath, feeling the strength rising within me. Agent Carter, 3 weeks ago, I was a widow sleeping in a rundown motel with $150 in my pocket. Today, I sit here, facing the FBI, willingly revealing my late husband's secrets. Fear? no longer controls me. So what is it? She asked, her eyes curious. Anger, I said. Pure, burning anger at being manipulated by people who have looked down on me for decades. Rachel's smile deepened, her eyes shining with respect. Miss Brooks, would you be willing to wear a recording device? 4 hours later, I sat in the living room, a recording device hidden under my shirt, waiting for Ethan and Laura to arrive for what they thought was a surrender. They knocked on the door at 7:30 p.m. sharp, dressed as if they were attending a company party. Laura held a briefcase, no doubt containing the settlement papers they believed would save them. Mom, you look a lot better than you did a few weeks ago, Ethan said, forcing a friendly smile, as if he hadn't kicked me out. A clear mind works wonders, I replied, my voice calm. Laura opened the briefcase with the confidence of someone used to negotiating. Eleanor, she said, our attorney has prepared a very reasonable agreement. You will keep the house, $4 million in clean assets, and be cleared of all charges related to James's activities. Is it have to God ham, and other is rain wide decided in other by than to a pen. Clean assets, I repeated, emphasizing the word. Interesting way to put it. Ethan glanced at Laura, his eyes intense. Mom, he interjected, the important thing is that the family is protected. We bury the past and move forward. What about the $28 million James left behind? I asked, looking them straight in the eye. Laura replied quickly. That money is tainted, Eleanor. It's related to James's illegal activities. Taking the $4 million is the best option. The rector's everything's of this. And what do you get? I asked, my voice sharp. Ethan leaned forward, trying to sound confident. We'll clear up these misunderstandings. The charges against Laura will be dropped. My reputation will be intact, and our family can heal. Misunderstanding? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You call fraud a misunderstanding? I paused, then continued. Ethan, Laura, tell me clearly, when did you two know about James's money laundering? Before you got married, or only recently, when you were plotting to rob me? They exchanged glances, the tension palpable. Eleanor, Laura said, her voice stiff, I don't think that question is relevant to this discussion. Actually, I think it's very relevant, I said, my voice sharp. If you knew about James's crimes and didn't speak up, you're complicit. If you only found out about it while you were carrying out your own scheme, you're just really unlucky. Laura paled, her voice shaking. What are you talking about, Mom? You're talking about how you two planned this all along, I replied. The fake will, the money laundering information, and Laura's connection to the forgers, none of this is a coincidence. Ethan laughed nervously. That's ridiculous, Mom. Really? I asked, looking him straight in the eye. Agent Carter finds it very plausible. We both stiffened. Agent Carter, Laura whispered, her voice cracking. The FBI, I confirmed. She's very interested in your stories about elder abuse, financial fraud, and especially blackmail, like the way you two tried to use James's crimes against you. Ethan stood up and reached for his briefcase. Eleanor, this conversation is over. No, Ethan, I said, my voice calm. I think it's just begun. Agent Rachel Carter and 2 other federal agents entered the living room. Ethan and Laura sat there, dumbfounded, as Laura's briefcase was immediately confiscated, along with both of their phones. Ethan Brooks and Laura Langston were arrested on federal charges of conspiracy to defraud, elder abuse, and witness blackmail. Ethan turned to me, his eyes filled with betrayal. Mom, how could you do this to your own son? Just like you forged papers to steal from me, Ethan, I said, my voice cold. Only my actions were legal. As the agents cuffed them, Laura tried one last time, her voice desperate. Eleanor, you have no idea what you've done. People involved in James's work will not let the FBI get away with it. Agent Rachel Carter paused, her voice sharp. Miss Langston, are you threatening a federal witness? Laura rushed to the defense. I was just alerting her to the facts. The facts, Rachel replied, are that you just added witness intimidation to your charges. Chatta said our videos. After they were taken away, Rachel sat down across from me. Mrs. Brooks, Laura's warnings weren't entirely unfounded. James has connections to dangerous people. How dangerous? I asked, a chill running down my spine. The Marconi crime family, primarily, she said. They've been using legitimate businesses to launder money for decades. James's investment firm is one of their most effective channels. The name Marconi meant nothing to me. But Rachel's serious look said it all. You mean I could be in real danger? Possibly, she admitted, pulling out a thick file. But there's something you need to know about James, something that changes everything. She opened the file. Miss Brooks, James didn't just launder money for Marconi. He was an FBI source. For 14 years, he secretly fed information about their operations while acting as a money laundering facilitator. My world turned upside down. James, an FBI agent? This operation is extremely sensitive, Rachel continued. Even the local FBI offices were not notified. James has helped us build a case against several crime families. The money he left you all legal, a reward from the FBI for his cooperation to maintain his cover. I stared at Agent Rachel Carter, trying to digest the information I had just heard. So, the $28 million is rightfully mine? I asked, my voice still shaking. Rachel nodded. Yes, Miss Brooks. James died before the investigation was completed, but his cooperation over 14 years led to 52 arrests and the seizure of over $180 million in criminal assets. Your money is a legitimate reward from the FBI. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked, feeling both relieved and stunned. Because the investigation is still ongoing, Rachel explained, and we weren't sure if you were involved or knew anything about James's activities. Ethan and Laura's scam actually helped us confirm your innocence. And I said, a crestable down. I almost laughed at the irony. Ethan and Laura had tried to blackmail me with information about James's crimes, but they had no idea he was an FBI agent. They had unwittingly exonerated me. They didn't know about James's role with the FBI, did they? I asked. Rachel shook her head. They only knew about the money laundering, not his cooperation. They intended to use the information to blackmail you, but it only strengthened your position. What happens now? I asked. Rachel smiled slightly. You'll get all your assets back legally. Ethan and Laura will face federal charges. As for the danger Laura mentioned from the Marconi family, they're dealing with their own legal problems after the upcoming search warrants in 4 states. I looked around the living room, once the scene of humiliation, now my rebirth. Agent Carter, can I ask you something? Of course, she replied. In your professional opinion, am I a bad person for feeling happy about Ethan's arrest? Rachel smiled, her eyes warm. Mrs. Brooks, in my professional opinion, you are a woman who refuses to be a victim. That's not a bad thing. It's admirable. 6 months later, I stood in my newly renovated kitchen, making coffee for 2. The early morning light streamed through the large windows I had chosen for myself, illuminating the granite countertops. I had carefully selected the first time in 40 years I had done something entirely for myself. Good morning, Eleanor. Linda Harper, a new financial advisor and close friend of Diane Foster's, walked in, holding a thick investment brochure. Good morning, Linda, I said, setting my coffee down on the table. Ready for your quarterly review? The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of court hearings, media interviews, and major changes in my life. Ethan and Laura were serving 24 months in federal prison for elder fraud and abuse. Their story had made headlines, making me a household name in the elder rights movement. Your investment portfolio is booming, Linda said, sitting down at the new dining room table I proudly designed. Your foundation is doing well, and the scholarship fund has just picked its first class. The Eleanor Brooks Foundation for Elder Justice is my passion. With $12 million of my inheritance, I have funded legal aid programs for seniors facing financial abuse from their families and pushed for legislation to protect them nationwide. Any news on the documentary? I asked, sipping my coffee. HBO has closed the deal, Linda replied, her eyes lighting up. They want to start shooting next month. My story had gone beyond the initial press coverage, attracting the attention of Hollywood. A documentary called A Widow's Triumph was in development, with proceeds going to organizations that support seniors. Linda put down her coffee, her eyes serious. And Ethan, she said, he sent letters from prison. I nodded, unsurprised. Ethan had written 14 letters, shifting from self-justification to forgiveness. I read the first few, but the words were like salt in the wound. In the end, I let them sit in the mailbox. Some relationships, once broken, cannot be mended with belated apologies. "Has your view on this changed?" Linda asked. "No," I said, my voice firm. 6 months ago, I was a grieving widow, willing to accept any shred of dignity from my family. That woman might have forgiven Ethan out of guilt or familial duty, but I am not that person anymore. Linda nodded, her eyes sympathetic. "What do you want me to do with those letters?" "Set up a meeting with Ethan's lawyer," I said, "not to settle things, but to clear things up." "Clear what?" Linda asked, curious. "I want Ethan to understand that his actions did more than just land him in jail. He has destroyed our relationship forever. His children will grow up knowing why their father went to jail." Linda raised an eyebrow. "That sounds harsh, Eleanor." "Good," I replied. "It needs to be harsh. The consequences must match the actions." Ethan had made selfish choices that hurt people he was supposed to care about. Letters from prison couldn't erase the emotional toll. Linda made a note in her notebook, her eyes full of understanding. "What about the kids?" she asked. "Ethan has requested supervised visitation." I shook my head. "My relationship with Ethan's children will depend on their choices as adults, not on their father's attempts to redeem himself." The doorbell rang, interrupting the conversation. Through the window, I saw a delivery truck with a large package. "It must be a new easel for the studio," I said to Linda, standing up. The studio, formerly James's office, was now my favorite renovation project. A light-filled space where I rediscovered my passion for painting, something I'd put on hold since getting married and becoming a wife and mother. "Eleanor," Linda said, her voice soft, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course," I said, signing for the package from the delivery man. "Do you ever regret what happened? The verdict? The media attention? The irreparable rift with Ethan?" I paused, considering the question. 6 months ago, I was an anonymous widow with no home, no money, no future. Now I was a philanthropist with a $12 million foundation, a documentary deal with HBO, and a purpose beyond myself. "Linda," I said, "Ethan and Laura tried to take everything I had, leaving me with 2 suitcases and a rundown motel. I don't regret fighting to get what was mine. My daughter-in-law forged documents and tried to blackmail me," I continued, my voice hard. "Ethan and Laura showed their true colors when they thought I couldn't stand up to them. But are they still family? No, they're just DNA. Family is about protecting you when you're weak, not exploiting your weaknesses for personal gain. It's enacted." Linda nodded, closing the folder, her eyes shining with approval. "Besides," I added, "look what I've become when I no longer let them define my worth." After Linda left, I walked around the house, now truly mine, decorated as I liked, arranged as I wanted. In the studio, I stopped in front of my latest painting. A self-portrait of a woman standing in the bright sunlight, her face turned forward, determined. The woman in the painting was no longer the grieving widow who had packed her life into 2 suitcases 6 months earlier. She was strong, independent, and unafraid. She embodied the lesson I had learned. The best revenge is not getting even, but being everything your enemy thought you could never be. Outside, the sun set behind the trees I planted on this land. Land I fought to keep with intelligence and courage, not marriage or blood. Tomorrow, I would continue to build the life I chose, not the life others had forced upon me. If Ethan wanted to mend his relationship with the woman I had become, he would need to bring more than prison letters or empty apologies. He would need to demonstrate real change, change worthy of me. I stood in the studio, looking at the self-portrait, feeling the strength of the woman in it. She wasn't just surviving, she was living, truly living, and shaping her future on her own terms. I picked up my brush, ready for the next stroke, for the next chapter of my life. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences in the comments. Your opinions are invaluable.